Hello, and welcome to AIGA's Fireside Chat. Thank you for joining us. Before we begin our chat this morning, a few housekeeping notes. This session is being recorded and will be available for viewing post-event. We're also live streaming to our followers on LinkedIn and Facebook. Please remember that all AIGA events follow our code of conduct. Please connect with us and share your thoughts. The hashtags for this fireside are AIGA Design and Future of Design. Now, it is my pleasure to welcome Bennie F. Johnson, AIGA's Executive Director, and today's guest, Robin Petravic, co-owner and Managing Director of Heath Ceramics, AIGA's 2022 Corporate Leadership Award winner. Bennie, Robin.
Thank you, Amy. And greetings, everyone, and welcome to today's extremely special Fireside Chat. We've long said, and we know deeply, that design is important. Design is a critical part of changing our world for the better, changing the way we live, we work, and interact. One of the things that I'm really proud about that we do every year at AIGA is we look across our corporate landscape at companies that are being influenced and led by design, that are working to have a positive impact on their communities and the world around them. And we recognize those companies with our very prestigious and very focused AIGA Corporate Leadership Award. There have only been a handful of companies who've received this award over the years. So today's Fireside focuses on this year's winner, Heath Ceramics. Heath is being recognized for their progressive policies, their corporate philosophies, and the provocative notion that what beautiful and functional design is and can be. They were a women-founded organization, partially employee-owned, community-focused, with a business that has a true vision for sustainability and goods that last. So today, I'm happy to welcome to our fireside the co-owner and managing director of Heath Ceramics, Robin Petravic. He has a relentless drive towards building better business. He leads a nuanced operations portion of the design-led Heath, paving a way for long-term viability and stronger contributions to its community. You know, this started in 2003, following a happenstance visits to Heath Ceramics, where Robin and his partner, Catherine, purchased the pottery that began in 1948. Determined to reverse the dying art of American-made, the duo continued without compromise, designing and making locally under one roof. Methodically, they built a full circle responsible business anchored in Edith and Brian's Heath's original vision, one of utmost product integrity that employee owners can be very proud to carry on. So Robin's superpower, and I love this as superpower, is slow business. Yes, I said slow business. Marrying a business profit with its power for good, growing sustainably and leaving the world a better place for having existed. To this end, Heath has been a recipient of the Smithsonian Cooper Hewitt National Design Award in 2015, and this year, the AIGA Corporate Leadership Award. So I'd like to welcome to our fireside, Robin. Thank you, good sir. I hope I didn't embarrass you with the intro.
There were a few things that I was not ready for, but it all sounded great. Thanks, Bennie. I was waiting for the superpower part. I wasn't sure what you were going to say. So it's like, what did we tell him?
Well, you know, it's one of those things that it's one thing to tell us, it's another thing for us to witness it. And you know, hearing that really made perfect sense when I think about your role at Heath. What I love to do is I like to start where it started for you. So 2003, take us back. You and Catherine you come across Heath.
Yep.
And what happens? How do you go from being an admirer to the owner?
How do you go from being the admirer to the owner? I think like a lot of things, you start out by admiring it and you start trying to figure out why you admire it. And what is it that's really kind of speaking to you and what's that pull in your heart? And, you know, sometimes that happens and, you know, you think about it a lot and that's usually a sign that maybe it's not the right thing. But when you just start doing things and there's this pull, it kind of means it's the right thing. And for us, we were enraptured by the physical experience of being in this building, the 1959 building, as we call it, here in Sausalito, down the, half a mile from my house where I am right now. And there was something about everything being under one roof that really appealed to us, as designers, looking at that and seeing that there is, making clay, manufacturing pottery that you've designed and putting it in the store, firing it, and then there's a store. It's right there. It's all under one roof, and the appeal of just that, having that. Being able to understand and learn from that process and work with it was really exciting.
One of the things that I admire is that you are an intentionally small company with this enormous outpaced impact. When we first were talking about you as a corporate award winner, I remember hearing like, I knew of Heath, and I was surprised that the person to the left of me or right of me knew of Heath, and everyone felt that you were our own little secret. And it was amazing that, the lift and the brand exposure that Heath has, that everyone knows about you, but you feel like it's your own best kept secret. Talk about that balance that you're able to strike as being this really intimate brand that has such wide reaching touch and appeal.
Yeah, that's I love your story there, and I love that. I get that too when I meet people. They have their own kind of Heath story, or often, my favorites is when it comes from their parents or grandparents, as to how they were introduced with Heath and sort of the special connection that they have. We we do try to focus on, we're not out to grow. We're out to really just kind of keep on refining what it is that we do and keep our focus in what we do. And part of that is looking, at our sort of day-to-day experience or day-to-day impact, and not trying to, I think there is that understanding that you don't have to, we do want to have an impact, a positive impact on, other designers, other companies, on society. But I think we realized early on that you don't, size is not a requirement for that. It's I think the quality of one's visions and how one shows up in the world on a daily basis. One of our really early partnerships and continued partners has been with Alice Waters, and who many of you know from her restaurant Chez Bennie's, and if you've been lucky enough to have dinner or lunch there, it's really special. And I always remember that Alice has got a massive impact in her world, with her edible schoolyard project, et cetera, et cetera. She's only got one restaurant. There's a lot of other chefs that have a lot more, but she's only got one restaurant, and she's been able to make that impact. And, we always kind of keep that in mind as we show up in the world too, and what's the relationship between scale and impact. And sometimes it's inverse, and we're comfortable in that spot.
All right. Talk a little bit about, I think one thing that stands out is you all proudly proclaim that you're a design-led business, a design-led small business. And I know it extends beyond just the products. So talk to me a bit about the role that design plays in every aspect of you running Heath.
Well, I mean, design is design's really important. It's in, for us, it's in our hearts. It's also a hard word to define. It's a really hard word to sort of pin down. And as many of you know, like, how do you explain what design is to, let's say, start off with like your parents? What is design? Why are you a designer? What makes you different? And so we do think about design as being a very holistic, sort of value and intention in a place like Heath. And I'm not and have not been, for a long time, been involved in the sort of the close level of design of product or our retail, showrooms and those kind of things. And so for many years, people ask me like, well, you're a designer. What do you do now? Well, I think of myself as designing a company, right? And I'm designing a company and designing the impact, because all those things are kind of connected, all the aspects of how you show up, from the product to the way that it relates to your factories and how they create that showroom experience or that customer experience. All those choices are very intentional.
Right.
And, that's the kind of design that I've been involved with, more than any other type of design in over the many, many years. So, I don't think there's anything that is, that is really not important in terms of how things are connected together that are going to affect the experience ultimately that, our customers have, or anybody that interacts with us as a company, or our employees for that matter.
Right. Speaking of employees, let's talk about the people, which is really a heart of both in terms of engagement, craftsmanship, but also ownership.
Yeah.
About the role that your people, the Heath family, have played in the company's success.
I think that, so we started out with about 24 people in 2003 when Kathy and I bought the business, and now it's around 180 people.
Oh, wow.
180, 200, something like that. It's kind of that scale where you just, it's like keeping up with remembering everybody's name becomes a challenge over 100. And, so it's kind of at that scale where there is still, a level of intimacy. It can be there. We just celebrated we have a all hands every couple of weeks, and we celebrate anniversaries. Yesterday, we celebrated anniversaries from 2 years to 58 years.
Wow.
So, and then there's another one in there of 32 years. So clearly we've got new people, we've got people that have been here a long time, and they hold a lot of the sort of institutional knowledge, the legacy, seeing Heath through different eras. And that's really important that we have that mix of people involved in the business, who can kind of hold on to the stories and the history. What are the values that have been important and consistently important to Heath for all those many, many years? And then the new people coming in who are kind of learning from that and bringing their own perspective into things. So, people are, of course, are super important. They're responsible for every aspect of what we do, from, the guy who makes the clay in the morning to the person that shops, that closes up the shop at the end of the day. They're all here under one roof.
As I hear you talk about tenure and longevity, for me, it just creates a really nice parallel and metaphor between your actual ceramic products themselves. We talk about kind of Heath being a part of families for generations and being passed down. Describe for me the feeling that you have when you have a legacy design that meets a new finish. I know I'm always interested when I come to the site and I see something that I've seen before, but you've introduced a new color palette, a new glaze, or a new moment. Talk to me a bit about that moment of taking legacy, combining with what's next.
Yeah, there's, for us, there's a great exhibit. Actually, I got to get back to it, but over at the Oakland Museum of California Art in Oakland, California, there's an exhibit right now of Edith Heath and her impact on the world. I think it's up through the month of October. I gotta take a couple of people over there before it closes next week. But we've always taken our cue from what has come from the past, and our view on what's new is about evolving and learning from, what has come before. So when you look at product, we look at what's been, what's of essence to, the product that we made before, and we look at the techniques that have been experimented with before, and the glazes, the applications, and we take a look at those in terms of jumping off points. What can we learn from them? What can we evolve from them?
Right.
And in that way, we never get something that is so kind of radically a departure that it's like, whoa, where did that come from?
Right.
It is kind of a slow development. Sometimes we go full circle. It's exciting for us when we do new glazes, but we bring back a technique that we know from our archives, and we're really fortunate to have those archives. That was first tried by Edith Heath in 1951, for example. And how do we, what's changed in the materials, or what can we change in the application process that brings that back to be relevant, in 2022. And what's, I think, a remarkable result of that is that, when we do that, we find it is still relevant.
Right.
That technique, that thing that design that we first saw come to life in 1952, doing it again in 2022, it doesn't feel old.
Okay. Yeah.
But that's been our jumping off point, where we've kind of taken that as a learning and look to evolve it, and it feels very current. And so there's something about just kind of learning from the past, right. In everything that we do, that is also pretty core to our practice.
It's interesting to talk about learning, and the last 3 years in particular, our worlds and our lives have focused on our home. Right? Mm-hmm. That we call home, and how we built these relationships with not only the experience, but the objects around us. What are some of the things you've learned about your products and the brand's role in people's lives this last couple of years?
I think the last couple of years, I think we've learned, that, again, our products have become, they've become, as we hope, part of people's lives. Right. And they become part of people's stories in their lives. And, they take on something more than just the object, but it's that kind of relationship of, when did this object come into your life? What are the dinner parties and conversations that they were a part of? What are they, how do they kind of help me, as a homeowner, express myself? The meal I served on something, that sort of that tradition when I have family over, right. Or maybe it's for in a family, it's that grandmother's serving bowl that she always brought out and made that special right. dish. And those are the kind of memories that get created, and that make me feel really good about what kind of the way we're able to kind of contribute to people's lives in that way, and create those memories and experiences that people hold on to for decades. They're not momentary. And again, in the last 3 years, there was a stronger and stronger sort of need for that, to create that sort of comfort and familiarity and connection.
So we talk about home. One of the things that I find interesting is you all are famous for opening up your facilities to have people come in. And mm-hmm. How is that to kind of lay your production and brand bare and invite people in?
It's something it was something we stopped doing for a couple of years, right. The last couple of years, which is a real bummer, because it was, like you said, is really important to our identity. It's something we were famous for, and something that was very important for us to do from the get-go. I think going back to one of your first questions, when back in 2003, it was one of the things that for Kathy and myself became really obvious. Right. It's this factory is amazing to walk through and see how pieces are made, right. To see the history layered into it, to see the machinery, to see the material change state and go through all these different stages, right. And the transformation that happens with all those things. And it's just something that we really, really wanted to share, because it's part of what we do is really that process of making things. It's not about creating products where there's a design, then the product shows up on the shelf. Right. It's really, it's the full process in between. We want people to understand and see how we make clay. Right. What are the qualities of clay? What are the different nuances in terms of even at the beginning of that process that are going to affect that end result, and the knowledge that goes into, all those different processes and stages of making clay, making glazes, applying them, putting them together, the firing process, and how different results come from all those things, and how sometimes you're also surprised, that you can't control it. And that's actually one of the more, I think, for me, the more important parts of the processes around that particular material, clay, ceramics. It's got its own voice. You can't control it, and you need to figure out how to let it speak. And that, I think, is another sort of value in that, in the material that we work with, that I think is important for people to remember, that we also want to communicate that we can't control everything, and that we need to sort of find the beauty in where, in this case, nature or material has a voice. So opening up the factories is really important in that way. And the other component of it is understanding that we have people that, and it's always been a hard thing, it's on the one hand, we've got people in the factories who maybe feel a little, might feel like, why are all these customers, what are they doing in the factory? Like, I'm here doing my work. Why do they care? Or, but it's, it's also letting people making that connection between, those people that are involved in the making of, the product that we make, and the customers that appreciate it. And don't just commit, we're kind of saying, don't just appreciate the product, appreciate the people that are behind it as well, because they've got a lot to share and a lot of talent and craft. And, there's a lot more to what goes on behind creating that bowl than one might imagine, might realize. And that's the whole point of opening up the factories in that way. And I think for our employees too, knowing that it's more than just a transaction, that there's a real appreciation for what they do on a daily basis, and the pieces that they make, and how they do touch people's lives.
It really is amazing, because your ceramic works become prized parts of people's lives and stories. They're there through all these moments. I remember you telling me the story, and it just blew me away, but made perfect sense. We talked about all these positive moments, but you talked about people creating identity post-divorce, coming to you. I need my own Heath to start my new life, right? Now, you said something about craft. And what I also found interesting is ceramics is really a global craft. And not only are you working with your team and the talent there in your office, you're exchanging ideas globally as well. When I look at your partnerships and alliances, you're really kind of bringing in a lot of global influences with fire and clay. Talk about the role of kind of the global, and I think you referred to them before as friendships more so than alliances and partnerships.
And they're really like friendships, and they're they're friendships where you learn from each other, and so what's our our version of a partnership, or call it a collaboration, is really one where there's something to offer, and you're learning from each other. So and sometimes that can come from individual craftspeople, we're not that at this stage. We're much bigger, and sometimes it can come from other companies, and it's not always from clay. I'll give you a few examples. I was just in Japan visiting Akio Nukaga, who is an individual potter from a town called Kasama in Japan, and he's got a home studio, works by himself with the help of his wife and daughter. It's a family run enterprise, and there's something about the way that he creates his pieces that is really kind of inspiring to us. Does it work into our work in any way? I don't know. Our role is to like showcase what he does, and our appreciation for his process, is very, very tedious process of craft. So we've got partnerships like that, or friendships like that, where there's learning and just mutual appreciation, and sometimes it's that mutual appreciation club.
Right.
And next month we're also doing another project that we'll be sharing with Artec, Finnish furniture company, founded by Alvar Aalto. Also, it's not ceramics, but there's a craft there in intention and design, in furniture, in wood, and Aalto always combined in tabletops wood and tile.
Right.
And so there's a coming together kind of two companies that have been around for a long time and have continued to sort of stay classic and true to their original designs and intention, and kind of coming together and learning from, like, well, what's your path? Like, why have you stayed so true? How have you stayed true to that original vision? How has Heath stayed true to that original vision? And then how do those things kind of come together in bringing our own expertises in creating something that is new for today, but really still, again, like an evolution of something that was an idea from 60 years ago.
So speaking of partnership, what keeps you and Kathy inspired?
What keeps us inspired? What keeps us inspired? I mean, there's a lot of Heath, because again, we think of it very holistically.
Right.
So on the one hand, there's design and product, and it's, if I really need an inspiration, I just need to walk downstairs to the factory and watch plates being pulled out of the kiln and stacked and organized, and I can get inspired by that. I can, or even better, get up at 6 a.m. on a winter morning when that kiln opens, and everybody's starting to pull the baffles away from the kiln, and the new dinnerware is there, and the colors, and that inspires me still every single day. So there's a lot around the building in terms of the development and product, and the work I have to run tomorrow out to our clay studio and dig through the samples for a project I'm working on, and that inspires me. It's just kind of like pulling through the samples of things that people are experimenting with, things that may never see the showroom, but so there's a lot of inspiration there.
I was going to ask you about that, about those.
You want to come with me? You want to come with me to the sample room?
Hey, I want to come to the sample room. And I also was thinking about this. If you're telling the story, after about 30 firesides, you're my very first guest who actually works with fire. Get me as we're talking about this. I would love to be in there. I'm curious into those things that are dynamic explorations that don't make it to the showroom, make it out of the kiln, right? They have this life in the space that aren't quite there yet, but have their own existence. Talk to me about those kind of design moments for you that are in that in-between space.
Those kind of moments are, I think somehow they always do kind of make it in the showroom, and we're not very, we don't hold sort of the sample or testing process very preciously. I think, everything is beautiful.
Nice.
Everything that comes out is beautiful, but sometimes we want to hold on to things because they are so precious that we want them to be inspiration. So those are the things that don't make it out, but otherwise, so there'll be, we've got that inspiration we hold on to that is like dear to us. We can't let this thing go because something is going to click for us.
Right. Something's going to come
at some point in time. Or it's the happy accident that might happen, with a glaze. But otherwise we do share those things, we don't really, there's nothing, that's not really, not possible to be shared with the world, because in ceramics, everything has a beauty, even if it wasn't as intended. So when you do come out to our showrooms, there might always be something surprising there, or special, and certainly a few times a year we'll put everything out. Nothing is that precious that we want to hide it.
Well, count me in on this trip. I'm going hand in hand. We're going to the sample room in this space. One of the things that I also love is that you and Kathy have been really thoughtful about thinking about your business, been intentional about the ways you're going. And there are a couple of maxims that you've talked about that really come through in our conversation now. But I love this one. You don't need to impress anyone other than your customers, employees, your vendors, and yourself.
Yeah.
So when you think about it, you approach this in a really unpretentious way, that it's about the work and it's about the design of the product and the company and the people, that becomes your focus. You also have this space along with that is take care of your people and your community, and they'll take care of you back. Talk a little bit about that statement and your role within communities.
Well, I think it really kind of comes back to, and this is one of the other things that continues to inspire us, how we, not just design a product, but how we continue to show up as a business.
Right.
And I use that term, or as a company, and I use that term company and business loosely, and only because it's how, we've kind of set up our society that we live in, and the structure that we live in. Business is a part of it, creating companies is a part of it. But, what is really, having a business in that sort of sense of it, I don't think of myself as, Kathy and I don't think of ourselves as business people.
Right.
Though many people might say, you're really successful business people, or you're really good at business. Well, we don't really think of ourselves as business people or want to have a business necessarily. We just really believe that when you do things for the right reasons, you'll be able to continue supporting it.
Right.
And that's really, what we think about. How do we continue supporting the things that are important to us?
Right.
And continuing the supporting the things that are important to us come down to continuing to make the product that we want to make, that really kind of, comes from that place of craft and the creative heart, the integrity in how it's made. And then how do we also be able to, always keep in mind the well-being of our employees. Right. How do they get that sort of, feel good about, their work, what they're learning, that they always have somebody that has their back. And that's kind of our intention, to always sort of show up in that way, because that's what's important. Making money is not important. Right. Making more money than you did last year is not important. Making more money than your quote unquote competitor is not important. Right. And what is important is that, we're able to sort of provide sort of that stability and for a community that feels like, we are together, and we're here for each other. And then that's really, that's really the key. It's almost a shame that money even has to come into the factor. And that is one of the tensions that we deal with at Heath all the time, is that, it's the reality of what enables us to do what we do, but it's not the end goal. Right. Kind of, having a, sort of, making money, having that business is the means to the ends of kind of how you hold on to these things that are meaningful, but it's not really what it's about.
Well, another one of your business lessons is to avoid intentionally putting yourself in a position where you need to make decisions that are purely for financial reasons. Yeah,
that's right. And that kind of comes back to that sort of slow business idea, sort of always thinking about, like you said, never putting yourself in that position where it's like, oh crap, we got to do this because we got to make money or something like that, or because we, for the short term, sort of never stretching yourself so much that, something may not be affordable, and then you're going to have to really only do things for, I guess in our view, the wrong reasons, to kind of cover that cost. And it's something that we've always been aware of just kind of not putting ourselves at risk, so that we can always kind of control why we're doing something and continue to do things for the reasons that motivate us, and not because of financial need. And that's something that I think happens always with this idea of fast growth that is, somewhat arbitrary. Why do you need a double in revenue? What's that really for? Is that really because, is that, voices we think about, voices in your head, right? Is that the voices in your head? Is that because somebody said you're only successful if you double your revenue every year? And yet those are the kind of things that sort of force you into sort of positions where, your choices are narrowed in terms of really kind of pursuing the passions and the focus of things that are important to you.
Well, we're rounding the corner of 2022. So we're about to hit 2023, which will have been, I know it's hard to hear, 20 years since you and Kathy took the baton of Heath. I want to ask this question as we kind of look back at our younger selves. What advice would you have to Robin and Kathy from 2003, based on what you've learned the past 20 years?
That's a really good question. And when I see Kathy tonight, I think, that's kind of a good question for ourselves. Gosh, okay, so putting me on the spot there with a great question. I think it's still, it comes back to what we were just, some of the themes that we've talked about here. It's, following, always staying true to sort of that passion, kind of what drives you in that heart. I think we've done that. I think that we've done that really well over the years.
Right.
But I think that we also, there are some years that, maybe we grew a little bit faster than maybe we wanted to. And this is going to sound strange to you and maybe the audience, but, it's those years when we grew 10%, we wish we'd grown 5%. I know 10% sounds like not much in sort of the world of business, or at least in terms of wow, that's really successful. But for us, I think we could have slowed it down even a little bit more, 3% a year instead of 5% a year, those years of 10%. Right. But it's hard to do in kind of our world and in sort of, our society and the way things are set up. But I think there's an aspect of that I think all the right instincts that we've had were there, 20 years ago. And, I think a lot of them are still there today. Right. So there's just a few, I think, nuances like that, the business lessons that you talked about, there's, just a few of them. We have others that we've learned over the years, but they've always, that core was there 20 years ago. I don't think it was anything missing. I think we're better at expressing them, or like what we meant or what we felt at the time. Like we felt all those things. I don't think anything's radically different, but now we kind of understand a little bit more like, well, why did we feel that way? Why was that important to us?
Why was that?
Why did we get into it in the first place? And I think that all stays true. I don't think there's been any kind of major sort of missteps that we would go back and recorrect, but I think, just maybe slowing it down, maybe even a little bit more.
So it's interesting. You spend a lot of time sending your work and craft out to the world. You send it out to communities and homes and spaces. Have you been surprised at times in which the work has come back to you, where you've looked up and you find a Heath product is in the background of someone's home experience, or it's a part of someone's life that they've shared back with you?
It's always a nice moment. Yeah, absolutely. And especially when it's like, it might be in another country, again, it's like in, Japan, where I just was, to find it sort of in random places, or you might find something on a display in a store or something like that. So it is surprising. And then the story that comes with it of like, well, the owner actually came to the factory in Sausalito and found it and put it in their carry-on bags and carried it back. So there are all those stories. I think the favorite stories I have are when, I might meet somebody who's coming in to add on to a collection that they inherited from their grandmother, say, for example.
Right.
Or my favorite might be like when I meet somebody who's coming in who said, like, I'm getting a new set of dinnerware for myself because I just gave away my set to my granddaughter. So this is for me. So I always, yeah, those stories are always kind of coming back to us. Run across Heath in little restaurants around the country as well, or even the world sometimes, where just, again, it's that story. And for me, it's what I love is, again, not when it's like, well, somebody put in an order or they bought it online, but when somebody just happened to be coming through Sausalito and they had that, or San Francisco or LA, and they had that full experience of, being in that location. They've got a restaurant somewhere else in the country, but
Right.
they bought a few pieces and they put it in their carry-on bags and they carried it home. That's very different from, I found it online,
Right.
I had it shipped.
Right.
And instead it's like, I took the tour, I dug her in through the shelves, I pulled a piece out the back and it was the one I loved, and I went through a stack of 30 and I picked out the 5 that spoke to me the most, and then I carried it home in the plane, and that's how it ended up in that restaurant or that place, and that's
And
what
I love that story about the curation that we all go through.
Mhm.
They're all the same, but they're different. I'm
Yeah.
picking the one that makes the most sense to me. And then that sense of protection. I'm taking it, I'm wrapping it up, I'm caring for it, I'm getting it through TSA, I'm bringing it home. Like, you have to be committed to the product that entire way through, right?
Yeah.
To come up in this space. But I think it speaks to something we were talking about earlier, the return and the need of our human experience,
Mhm.
of being able to touch and feel and be a part of the product and space.
Mhm.
So I think is a great kind of point for us to talk about the celebration of you all receiving our award. It's going to be our first in-person celebration in the last 3 years in Seattle in a couple of weeks. And we're really looking forward to inviting all of you who are listening to join us for our AIGA Design Conference, where we're going to celebrate Robin and Kathy and the owners and artisan of Heath on being our 2022 AIGA Corporate Leader of the Year. But it's going to be great that we'll be there in person.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
That's
great that we're back to doing that again.
To share our space. So, what are the things, I'm going to ask this last question for you. When you walk into your warehouse and your manufacturing facility, what one thing gets you excited? When you just walk in off the street, as you take your leisurely stroll later on today, what
Yeah.
do you get excited about?
Smiling faces,
Okay.
smiling faces, and sometimes still under the mask, but smiling faces, and a name that brings back that I've known for years, and brings back memories of when I first met that person, how they started in their role,
Right.
and where they've gotten to, where they've risen to later on. So that's what really kind of gets me excited, is seeing those folks in person.
I think that's a great moment and a great story for us to close our fireside, thinking about the power of, why Heath, a design-led, human-first organization, a community that has been since 1948, and under Robin and Kathy's leadership since 2003, been bringing to us incredibly well thought, American-made products and heirlooms and plates and vases that change our world. So thank you, and Robin, for sharing with us your superpower of slow business, which I really think allows us to see that time is an incredible element as we design our future and our world around us. So Robin, thank you for joining us. Thank you for the insight. And thank you, and Kathy, for the incredible example of Heath as an organization changing the world.
Thanks, Bennie. It's great to see you today, and look forward to seeing you in person as well.
Likewise, and count me in. We're going through the crates, my friend.
We are. You've got. Yeah. You know how to find me.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you all for being a part of today's Fireside Chat. Thank you.